we have Hannah Wicklund with us today.
Hi, how are you?
We're so delighted to have you on the show today. As Holly said, our first international guest. And I think the best way we can kick this all off is tell our listeners, if they've not heard about you, who is Hannah Wicklund?
Oh boy, how do you want the long answer or the short answer? No.
Give us the long answer.
Well, I have been a musician my entire life. I was very fortunate to grow up in a place, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, where there were ample opportunities to get out and start playing my music for people at a pretty young age. So I've been well aware of what I want to do and who I want to become my whole life for the most part, and that's I think with this new record of mine, The Prize, everything, all of the pieces have started kind of coming together because music has been a part of my life forever, but I've also been doing art my whole life. My mom's an artist, and art is really important to me, and so this new record is kind of the amalgamation of the art side of my life and the music side of my life, all, kind of meeting in the middle. So I think as far as who I am, just an artist at heart is the right answer.
That's amazing. And so with your new album and the artwork that comes with it, is there an overriding story that comes between the two? Are they interconnected?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the overall theme of this record is the passing of the baton from girlhood to womanhood. It was written all the songs were written when I was like 21 years old, which is, I think, that like crux point of where you're like really, I spent, maybe 18, 19, 20 thinking that I had certain things, figured out and stuff. And then I think 21 is where you realize like, oh, like I am actually starting to become an adult, but I'm not quite there yet. Like, I think that adulthood is more of like, it's a transition. It's not like this like destination you get to. And, so I think that the stories within The Prize are, a little bit more pointed. It's more, told through the lens of, breakups, romantic breakups, business breakups, like there's kind of, it's hitting on different chapters. So there's, a couple of songs like Songbirds Sing and The Prize, the title track, that are more rooted in my relationship with myself. So, I think when it came time to put the visual side together and have the art kind of tell the story of each record or of each song, because I did a painting for each song for the listeners who don't, know, I basically created an overarching world that it was the world of The Prize, which is, a castle floating on a cloud. And then each song kind of, in my mind, depicts, like a different journey. And I chose a different animal for each song. So I think that the art is definitely taken and inspired by the music. But
yeah. I mean, the artwork's absolutely beautiful. For all of those listeners out there, you really do need to go and check it out. But let's go right back to the start. We've gone right to the end. Let's go back to the start and let's talk about how you became an artist and the journey from the beginning.
Sure. I started my band when I was 8 years old, and we started playing out shows when I was 9, and I pretty much said yes to any show that came my way. We would do a lot of like free benefit shows and do a lot of like oyster roasts and little things like that. And then I graduated high school a couple of years early, so like shortly after I turned 16, I took the show on the road, so to speak, and I started touring. And then it's basically, I consider like my path and my career kind of like this one snowball that I've just like, it's slowly been pushing along, because originally I started out at 8 with a band called the Steppin' Stones. And we were like a power trio, like classic rock cover band that, we started doing originals, and we put out our first EP at 12, or I was 12. The guys were
that's
like 13,
awesome.
14. Yeah, it was, we still have them. We like burned the discs on my mom's computer, and then we printed out the labels, and me and my dad would like assemble. We probably assembled like 2,000 or 3,000 of these like cardboard CDs that we would sell at the merch table. So I've been selling original music at my shows since I was 12. And I did another EP at 14. And then we did a full length record called Looking Glass, which the song Looking Glass is on my last record, Hannah Wicklund and the Steppin' Stones, which, I wrote that song when I was 15, and I wasn't totally in love with the original recorded version, but I loved the song, which is why I chose to re-record that for my last record that I put out about 6 years ago. And then I did a similar thing with the song Mama Said, which was on the full-length record that I recorded after Looking Glass when I was like 16. So Looking Glass and Mama Said were always like standouts for me from that era of my playing and of my life. And so I chose to re-record those and release them on, my last record, which I think the perception, and this was intentional, but the perception was that was kind of like my first record ever. And it was the first record that I wanted to live on, because I had been like a teenager and my voice had changed a bit, and, the production was a lot better. So in an effort to basically quality control, I never put those last, those like earlier records online or anything. And it was still under the name The Steppin' Stones, which, it was still, I was like the songwriter, and it was still very much, my project. And I was definitely the driving force behind the band. But it wasn't until I was like 19 and I found myself in Nashville, and the guys I had been playing with, I went and started dating one of my drummers, which was a no-no. And then my bass player of a few years, he got a little homesick, and I just found myself in Nashville with like this entirely full year, and basically decided that it had always kind of been me, and I had never wanted it to be Hannah Wicklund. I wanted so desperately to be in a band, but that's kind of what set me on my more individual, embracing Hannah path.
That's just amazing, though, to get to that conclusion, though, at age 19 is still crazy, and to go on that journey from being 8 years old.
Well, yeah, I feel like I want to zone in on that, because there's a big personal journey as well as a musical journey within this. But even going back to the start, like, I'm thinking what I was doing at 8, like, let alone musically. And you say there about how at first you're playing classic rock covers, but writing your own music at 12, like, what were the big influences on you? What are you writing about at age 12?
I started writing songs when I was 4 years old. I started playing piano when I was 3, and the Beatles were my like first real heavy influence. So when it comes to like a fantastic, first musical inspiration, like as a songwriter, the Beatles, I mean, gosh, those songs are so fun and so deep, yet they can be lighthearted. Like, there's just, you have all the flavors of music, in my opinion, within the Beatles discography. And so I think that they were probably the biggest inspiration for me to like start writing so soon. But yeah, I have like songbooks from, and let me tell you, my lyrics have come a long way. But I basically, I had a hard time when I was 8 years old and I started the band. with Mick Ray, my bass player who I played with for like 7.5 years. And then Mark Bradley Jr. was our drummer. And in 2006, we had played a couple of shows out together as a band. But Mark's father was a private plane pilot, and they were flying to go visit their grandparents. And Mark and his dad and his 3 little sisters went down in the plane. And Mark was, he was ultimately on life support. He was the only survivor, and he was on life support for about 2 months. And that was just such a dark period. And I was young and hadn't really comprehended or grasped death in general. And then to kind of be confronted with all of that, it was hard. And I found myself, when I went back to school, he had gone to private school, and I went to public, and nobody really was aware of, like maybe people had heard about what had happened over the summer. But, I found myself I'd always had a hard time with bullies and stuff, but it just got so amplified after that. I think that grief is a really big target for people. And, so I decided at the end of that year, after going back to school, that I was going to say see you later to all the kids I've been in class with, and graduated basically elementary school at the end of my 4th grade year, which actually just painted a much larger target on my back when it came to bullying. And Hannah Montana had just come out, so like people were like, the favorite line was like, "Go back to 4th grade, Hannah Montana." And I didn't do a very good job of not giving a reaction, which I think I still struggle with not like wanting to like confront, the stuff. And so I think by the time I was 12, I'd already felt a lot of complex emotions as a young person. And so it's interesting because I actually just am about to be sending out the vinyl copies of The Living Vault, which is a record that I kind of consider to be like a little sister to The Prize. And that one will be going up on DSPs eventually, but for now I wanted The Prize to really be the record of the moment. But The Living Vault is basically a collection of songs that I wrote kind of like Looking Glass and Mama Said when I was younger, but from the ages of 12 through 17. And I went in with my older brother and we re-recorded a handful of these tracks to release on this, basically it's an EP, but I called it The Living Vault because it's songs from my youth that I want to keep playing. But there's a song, Versus the Villain, that I wrote when I was 12 years old. And it's got some lyrics in there that I'm still very proud of. But I now at 26, because it was just what I was doing. So in my mind, it was just like, oh, well, this is it. But in looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm a fucked up 12-year-old writing some of this stuff. I'm like, oh no, I wasn't too young.
Say it in that way. I just think that, your talent it starts right from the beginning, and that's really special. But I suppose my real interest would be, if you had another 9-year-old stand in front of you right now and said, what's your secret? What advice can you give me to starting my band or starting my life out as a musician?
Oh, I love that. Well, my first piece of advice would be to radically be yourself. So be yourself to whatever degree and whatever extent you want to at any time. And also to just take as many opportunities, especially, in the beginning. There's, that whole like 10,000 hours concept. I truly believe in that. And so, I played so many free shows and so many, almost free shows growing up. And that is the most helpful thing as, even if you're not a young person, but if you're just somebody trying to do anything, it's just, eagerly say yes. And then the time will come to, be a little bit more picky and choosy and all that stuff. I will say I probably wouldn't recommend someone go to the lengths that I did. I was playing, like, by the time I was 15, I was playing like 9 3-hour shows a week. And like, just like literally like working my little tailbone to a nub. So I'd say, like, within reason, say yes to everything. But yeah, I think that it can be an intimidating process. I was really, really lucky to have the support of my parents and of my older brother. But I think we each have our own path, and it's truly just about following your own. So yeah, I just say, be yourself and say yes to opportunities is a good start.
Well, I'm really interested because we've talked a bit about the journey and what that has culminated in with the prize, which now at the time of listening is out right now. So go and have a listen, everyone listening in. But talking about that journey, one of the most interesting things I think I've ever heard any musician say about their own life and about their own career is that they learned something from every single show they played. And I really liked the idea of that. But I don't think they quite had the commitment to playing shows in mind that you have had on your career, whether it be playing 3-hour shows a week, and you've just played all sorts of shows, just been in the UK, about to embark on massive world tour. Do you find that, especially having played quite so many shows already in your career?
Oh, certainly. I think that each show has its own flavor, and it's not just about what you're learning on stage. A lot of it is what you're learning off stage. So at the beginning of my career, when I was like playing out as a kid and stuff, a lot of the learning curves came with like, what do you do when your pedal board goes out? How do you handle having to switch guitars because a string breaks? Like, what do you do if you only have one guitar and a string breaks? Like, there's all these like little like I'd like consider it like that, like first level, like things that you have to learn, because really that's what experience does. Is there's always going to be something that goes wrong. It does not matter what level you are at. We were playing a show. I was playing in basically like an arena a couple of weeks ago, and my neck pickup on my guitar just went out of nowhere. And I still had a little bit of signal, but like I only had like a 20-minute set. So like for me, it's not like time to stop. And so like I had to like make do, and my fucking guitar was like popping in and out. Like, it does not matter. You're always going to have issues. So I think that like base layer of learning things is just learning how to deal with, the punches. And then I think like a little bit more of like minutia comes in. You start learning how to interact with the audience on the mic. You're learning how to interact with the audience when you're off stage. I definitely learned a lot over the last couple of years being an opener, because most of my career I've been built and I've been building as a headliner, and I've been playing a lot of, small club shows and things like that, and having the opportunity to go out with Marcus King last year, and then of course Greta Van Fleet. It's a totally different dynamic, so there's like a whole new set of rules basically, as like being the opener, and like do not go over your time slot, and do not do X, Y, and Z. And
have you made those mistakes and learned from them as a result? Have you learned the hard way? I see you smiling. That's why I asked.
I've had a couple. Trust me, I've learned a lot of lessons the hard way. I will say one of the things that I am actually very good at is timing my set.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think. I think maybe I went over by like, I don't really know. I don't really think I've gone over. I think that's one of those rules that they tell you ahead of time. The tour manager or whoever you're opening for is like, yeah, make sure you don't go over. And I took that one very seriously. So I'd say I'm okay in that department. But yeah, lots and lots of things. I think for me, now that I'm 26 and I've been on the road for like 10 years, one of the things that took me a little bit to learn is how to let certain things roll off my shoulders, because I think that it's gotten a lot better now. I think that women are getting a little bit more respect than we were like 6 years ago inside of, the touring side of the industry. And but boy, oh boy, have I had some sound guys and had some, venue managers and like people like that, it's almost like you're wondering, like, am I even welcome here? Do you even want me to be here? So I think in those moments, like, I think that as I've progressed and as I've been very comfortable on stage for a long time. So I'd say that most of the things that I'm learning at this point in life are more of the life things that come into play with touring and being on stage and such.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've had to learn a lot of lessons on the way. You've experienced a lot and, really honed in on your craft. So I suppose a really big question to ask is, since you've been performing all of these years with the new album out today, what is different about this album to the previous music through your musical career?
I'd say this is a very different record for me. In some ways, it's me kind of coming full circle, and it feels the most me. This is the most authentic record that I've ever put out. I wrote the whole record with the exception of 2 songs or co-writes. But I think that it's the first time that I really just accepted exactly what I felt like saying at the time, and didn't really try to sit down and think of like, oh, well, I need more of a riff song, or because a lot of times you're trying to balance out a record and or like, other people's thoughts or ideas kind of come into your head, especially when I was younger. There's a lot of, industry and record people saying, oh, you should listen to this, and have you heard this, and what do you think about trying to do something like this? And I think that this was my last record. I had a little bit of that kind of stuff ruminating in my brain, and this one just feels very solidly me. And it's I think a really important record in my development, because I have embraced my femininity and my womanhood through these songs in a completely different way than ever before. Because when I grew up, I was covering, all the raunchy rock and roll songs that, let's face it, are basically just like objectifying and sexualizing women throughout the whole song. And I'm like 11 and 12, 13, 14 years old singing, Rock You Like a Hurricane, and like, just like all these songs that in hindsight, I'm just like, oh my gosh, no wonder I was so confused about how to feel about myself. So I think that having rock and roll out there that women can listen to and actually feel uplifted is, instead of degraded, is something that I'm really excited to be hopefully providing. I hope that's the way that some people feel about the music, because we kind of joked around in the studio and we're like, we're gonna call this knowledge rock. Which is really silly and kind of not rock and roll in its own name, but I think that kind of works. So.
See, I feel like you could be starting your own niche here. Like, you've got to patent that straight away. Get on that. You are the owner. Knowledge.
I will. Knowledge rock. That's right.
I like that.
I do want to zone in on something that you said, though, which I find really interesting. You're saying about how personal this record feels, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about how you always wanted to be in a band. You didn't want to be just billed as Hannah Wicklund. And obviously the first album, which came out in 2018, is Hannah Wicklund and the Stepping Stones. And this is you, front and center. I know you toured with a band, you record with a band. What's that step like, making that change and really putting your name out there and taking ownership of that?
You know, that's interesting. I hadn't myself thought about that correlation and the fact that this record is I think of it as like my like, I don't know what word. I have no proper word coming to mind right now, but um yeah, my last record, I was still very much so attached and still wanting to be able to find like a band. I was willing to give away like 2/3 of my life's work just so that I didn't feel so alone. And yeah, I guess the symbolism in it being the first record that I am releasing as Hannah Wicklund, it is so personal. And I now that you say it, it's like, yeah, I couldn't really imagine these songs being released under a band name, which is really cool because it kind of affirms everything that has transpired and is that's a very good feeling. So thank you for pointing that out. I love that. Yes, this is me in all its positives and negatives. This is me for sure.
That's brilliant. So what would you say was the highlight of making this record?
Oh man, there were a lot of highlights. There was a lot. I mean, it was a completely different experience than when I've recorded anything else. Any other time in the studio, I've had a I've had a shoestring budget and about 10 days, literally, to get the project wrapped. And this, I think we were in the studio working on this for like maybe 9, 10 months on and off. Obviously not like every day, but a significant amount of time was spent in the studio on this record. And Sam, who produced the album, treated this project with such care, and I got to actually experience what working with someone was like. I think when I was a young person in the studio in the past, working with like kind of older, dominant male energy, it was very, it felt kind of constraining, and I never quite felt like I could express myself in the studio very, very well. And so this was the polar opposite experience. And so I'd say, like that was really special, was being able to kind of reframe my relationship with the studio as a whole. And I've been able to now build my own label through this experience, which was kind of came out of necessity. Like the path to releasing this record was quite difficult. And so it took me basically just taking matters into my own hands. And so I'd say that was one of the silver linings of this record as well, is that I've really, I feel very, very, very firm in who I am and what my path forward from this point looks like. So I don't know, this record brought me a lot of great things. My personal life I've never been happier, and that was definitely a result of this record. And yeah, I have a lot to thank the prize for.
Well, listening to the prize, we've listened all the way through several times now, and there's such a cool variety of sounds. Even just as you put on that first track, the word we used was quite cinematic more than anything. Actually, we came away listening to the first track going, this could be a Bond song. Like we thought it was very grandiose, felt really big. And
Hell in the hallway, wasn't it? We
yeah.
were like, oh yeah, I can really see that.
I love that.
And then as you listen through more of the record, you do have these more intimate moments, and it's such a cool variety of all sorts of sounds that come together so nicely. And I feel like everything we've been talking about, this journey from the 9-year-old who potentially did have their own struggles and wanting to be in a band as you got older, and now finding this identity and everything you've spoken about, it's such a cool conglomerate of everything. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Oh, I love that word. That works great.
it's
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say it's a real coming together. You can, I mean, I totally get the uplifting side of the record. I can really hear it, like hearing you say it is kind of going to that stage of, you know, becoming a woman in all senses. Like I really feel that. And I think, you know, if you can get that from a record and feel something, then it's pretty special.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. That means a lot. You're definitely my target audience with these songs, I think, which was not intentional. I just, you know, I did have a whole period of my career there for a few years when I was touring, and you know, I think that my guitar playing has, you know, definitely been helpful in my career, but I think that there was a point in time where I was being heralded as like, you know, shredder, guitar girl, whatever. And for me, my career and my music is so much more than my guitar playing. And I've always been passionate about my songs, but I think that through this record, I've realized just how much of a songwriter I truly feel that I am, and it feels really, really nice to have, you know, young, like-minded women connecting to these lyrics. That really warms my heart. So thank you.
One thing that I've got to ask as well, we've talked a lot about this journey, and obviously it's taken a lot of time to really craft this album and hone it to how you want it to be. What's the next step on this journey, not just for the music, but for you, Hannah?
Well, you know, I'm definitely, now that I have this record coming out, or now that it's out, I'm really excited to be able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, which, you know, obviously I'm always going to release music, and that comes very naturally for me. And especially with this new label that I've carved out and stuff, I have a very safe, practical place to be launching this music from, which has been a lot of what I've been struggling and spending my time, you know, worrying and focusing on over the last, I mean, basically decade. My career side has been really volatile when it comes to like other people managing me and, you know, trying to get labels. It's just been so distracting that now I think that my path being a lot easier in that department. You know, I'm really excited to use my powers for good, and hopefully in the next few years try and carve out a path, or help carve out other people's paths too. You know, I think that being a woman in rock and roll, it's such like a trope, you know, but it's actually very true. And a lot of the things that I've struggled with, I know I am not alone, and I know that there's probably a lot of other women and musicians out there that haven't had the easiest time. And so in the grander scheme of things, I'm really hoping that Strawberry Moon Records becomes a home for some other badasses. And you know, I have aspirations outside of just music, and you know, I want to write a book. I want to work on some film, television stuff. I've been auditioning for things for the last like year and a half. Obviously not with the strike, so that was a nice break from auditioning. But yeah, so I think that my world after the prize is going to be able to open up and expand in a totally new way, and I'm very thrilled for it.
Well, I think what we've got from that is we need to be keeping an eye out for Hannah Wicklund. So thank you so much, Hannah, for taking the time to talk. We are about 2 minutes away from our Zoom meeting ending, so we don't want it to cut off suddenly. So thank you so much for talking to us. It's been an absolute delight getting to know you and talk to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me, and hopefully I'll see you at some shows next year in the UK.
Yes. Go and listen to The Prize now. If you are listening, it is out. Go check out all the artwork that accompanies it. And as Hannah says, all sorts of dates. She's coming to the UK in May and June. So go and get some tickets for that. You won't regret it. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.